March 1933. A young man steps off a train alone onto a rail line buried in snow, with no interpreter beside him. His name is Gareth Jones. What he is about to walk into will force the world to say one word: famine. You will see how he got there and what that report cost him, his access, his name, and maybe his life. 28 years earlier, 1905, in the coastal town of Barry, Wales, that walk was not yet imaginable. His father ran the local schoolmaster's classroom. His mother had once worked far from Wales, inside the Russian Empire. Before her marriage, Annie Gwen Jones had worked as a governess near Yuzovka in the Donbass. She had come home fluent in Russian, and she kept the language alive at the supper table, one story at a time. The boy listened harder than his brothers did. No lesson book taught him that, only one voice at the table. One evening, she did not tell a fairy tale. She told them about a famine she had watched with her own eyes in Russia. She described empty grain stores, thin cattle, and villagers walking the roads, searching for bread that no longer came. "I never forgot the sound of it," she said. "Hunger has a sound before it has a name." The boy asked her to say it again, in Russian this time. He repeated the story back to her, word for word. He did not yet know the word famine as anything but a story from his mother's youth, safely finished, safely far away. By 1913, at 8 years old, he was copying his mother's Russian words into a cloth-bound notebook of his own. A habit that started as a game at a family table would not stay a game for long. 20 years on, that same notebook would leave Wales behind and travel east, into a country his mother once served. His mother's story was finished. His own, told in her language, in her old country, was still to be written. The famine his mother described stayed with him. So did the habit of repeating a story back exactly as told. At Barry County School, he collected languages the way other boys collected cricket scores. Welsh at home, French and German in the classroom. By his final year, he was reading newspapers in 3 languages before breakfast. In 1923, a scholarship took him to Aberystwyth. 2 years later, another took him further still. Cambridge, Trinity College, French, German, and Russian, read for a triple honors degree few students attempted at all. Lecturers marked him precise to the point of stubbornness. He would not guess at a word he did not know. In 1929, he graduated with a double first, 4 languages, 1 degree, no job. That same year, he began carrying a pocket notebook, small enough for a coat, and started filling it with names, dates, figures, exact wording. Nothing trusted to memory alone. A degree in 3 foreign tongues was rare enough that word of it reached beyond the university gates. In 1929, his university record crossed a desk in David Lloyd George's private office. By 1930, the former prime minister had hired him outright. Foreign Affairs Advisor, age 25. No diplomatic title came with it, only a desk near the corridor where policy was actually decided. Cables arrived daily from Berlin, Paris, and Moscow. Most of the office could read none of them without a translator. Jones could read them all. He became the man the office quietly relied on. One night, Lloyd George left him a stack of German cables and went home. Past midnight, Jones was still translating a warning his own employer had not yet read. A month later, Jones asks Lloyd George's office for something bolder, a seat on Hitler's own plane. German contacts from his Cambridge years pass the request along. 3 weeks after Hitler's appointment, it is granted. No British reporter has flown with the new chancellor's inner circle before. Jones is handed a boarding slip with his name spelled wrong. Aboard, the second passenger in the cabin is Joseph Goebbels, the party's new propaganda chief, traveling to a rally in the South. Jones takes the seat beside him, in German. No interpreter, no introduction needed. For the length of the flight, he listens more than he speaks, his Cambridge German carrying the talk. He writes nothing while Goebbels is watching, and everything the moment the man looks away toward the window. The engines drone on. Below them, farmland gives way to rooftops. On landing, Jones goes straight to the airfield telephone and dictates his account before customs clears. Within 2 days, the dispatch runs in the Western Mail, naming Jones as the correspondent aboard the flight. It is the first byline Berlin itself takes note of, the new German government's own press office. A file with his name is opened. He will not see it. He does not need to. The method that got him aboard is proven. Languages open the door. The notebook does the rest. Earlier, before the descent, Goebbels made one aside Jones almost let pass, a dismissive line about Soviet grain reports. Jones writes the line down anyway, word for word, though it has nothing to do with the story he is filing. As the plane drops toward Berlin, that line about Moscow's grain figures sits in his notebook, unread by anyone but him. That line from Goebbels about the Soviet Union stayed with him. By March, Jones had a Soviet visa in hand. The People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs approved it. Contacts built in Moscow all winter, finally paying off. But the visa came with a route already drawn for him. Intourist, the State Travel Bureau, guide included. That route was built to avoid Ukraine's countryside, which told him exactly where the countryside needed a witness. At a stop between Kharkiv and Kyiv in mid-March, he told his assigned escort he felt unwell and needed the platform air. The train pulled out without him. Jones was alone, off the in-tourist line, on foot. He carried bread and chocolate from Moscow in his coat, rationed to last the walk, and the leather notebook in his breast pocket. The first village he reached had no smoke rising from any chimney, and no dogs came out to bark. In 1933's collectivized villages, grain quotas had been set by Moscow and enforced by requisition brigades. Jones knelt by an empty barn and wrote what he saw. No livestock, no grain sacks, the doors torn for firewood. He wrote the village's name first, always the name first. On the road beyond the village, a gaunt farmer stopped him, asking if he had bread to spare. Jones split what bread he had. The farmer told him there was no bread left anywhere, not for months. The village school stood empty past the last house, its door unlatched, chalk still on an untouched board. Jones followed the farmer inside, out of the wind, and asked him to say again, slowly, what he had told him on the road. "There is no bread. We are swollen from grass. Tell them." Jones copied every word onto the page. By the third day, he had filled pages with village names, dates, and numbers of houses standing empty. The farmer's words were fixed in the notebook now. In 3 days, Jones would say them aloud in Berlin. The farmer's words were still in the notebook 3 days later, unchanged, when Jones reached Berlin. By March 29, 1933, he had booked a hall and called reporters from a dozen bureaus. The room filled fast. Correspondents for The Guardian, The Evening Post, wiremen from 3 countries, notebooks already open. Jones stepped to the podium and said, under his own name, that famine was underway across the Soviet Union. Then he read the farmer's own words aloud, unchanged from the page. "There is no bread. We are dying." For a long moment, no one in the hall wrote a word down. He named the cause plainly. Forced collectivization. Grain requisitioned past the point villages could survive it. He gave village names, dates, the empty stables he had counted himself, walking the route no escort had approved. A wire correspondent near the back stood and asked if he would put his name to every word. Jones answered, "Gareth Jones, on the record, no correction to make." By evening, the Manchester Guardian had the account on cable. The New York Evening Post within the day. From Berlin, the story reached wire desks in London, Paris, and New York inside the week. For the first time, editors who had barely run his byline were asking for follow-up copy by name. In Moscow, the Soviet Foreign Ministry issued a flat denial before the week was out. Among the Moscow correspondents who read the denial was Walter Duranty of the New York Times, already drafting a reply. Jones did not yet know the name of the man already answering him. One Moscow correspondent stayed behind and asked what this would cost him with the visa men. That correspondent's warning did not stay a warning long. Within 4 days, Moscow answered him in print. Walter Duranty held the New York Times bureau in Moscow, a Pulitzer already on his wall. His column ran under a plain claim: no actual starvation, only a shortage of food. Not wrong, exaggerated was the word he chose for the Berlin press conference 3 weeks earlier. Duranty had toured the same famine region under Soviet escort, on the itinerary Jones had walked away from. One man left the train, the other never stepped off it. Other Moscow correspondents faced the same choice Duranty had already made for them. Their Soviet visas came up for renewal every few months, and renewal ran through the same foreign ministry desk. A group statement went out under several bureau names, calling the famine reports overdrawn. Every signature kept a desk in Moscow. None had walked the villages. Jones answered in the letters pages himself, standing by every figure in his notebook. The Soviet Foreign Ministry answered differently. It revoked his accreditation for good. With the region sealed, his critics turned to the last thing still open to them: his notebook. One village name did not match a map. One figure ran a few weeks off the official count. 2 small slips, held up to hide a record of hundreds of pages. The scale of the famine went unchallenged in print. It was the messenger's spelling that made the headlines. With Moscow closed and his own colleagues turning cautious, Jones booked passage east instead of home. No editor sent him east. No paper claimed him. By 1934, Jones was filing from Manchuria and Japan on his own name and his own money. Freelance paid less and protected him less, but it opened doors Moscow had sealed to accredited reporters. The same skill that once got him a seat on a chancellor's plane now got him past checkpoints no other Western byline could clear. This time, the access ran out. In August 1935, Jones hired an escort into Inner Mongolia. That escort would later be tied, in post-war research, to contacts inside Soviet intelligence, a detail no one in the car that day had reason to name out loud. On August 12, 1935, one day before his 30th birthday, Gareth Jones was shot dead outside a town called Kalgan. No trial followed. No government ever claimed his death. British and Japanese inquiries both opened files. Neither produced an arrest, and the case has stayed formally unsolved for 9 decades. In Moscow, Walter Duranty's Pulitzer stood unquestioned. In Wales, a 30-year-old man's byline went quiet. For decades, the record favored the man who denied the famine over the man who walked into it. That changed slowly. In the 80s, historians researching the famine pulled his dispatches back out. In 2019, the film Mr. Jones brought his name to a wider public than it had reached in his own lifetime. A researcher opened the notebook once dismissed as amateur and found figures matching today's death toll. The New York Times reviewed Duranty's Pulitzer in 2003 and left it standing, citing no single article proven deliberately deceptive. His revoked Soviet accreditation was never restored. What survived was the notebook, now primary evidence of the famine. The farmer's words from that frozen road reached a Berlin podium in 1933 and now sit printed as history. That's the record. He walked alone into a famine the press denied and paid with his life. What would you have printed standing there?